As I've mentioned in the past, in order to keep a working video game console collection, you're going to have to be expected to keep up with maintenance. Now, there are a few niggling issues I've got with my own consoles, and there are probably issues that some of you are experiencing with yours as well. Hence why I've started a little maintenance mini-series to catalogue it all. Now, there's nothing more pressing at the moment than the issue that my OG Xbox is presenting right now. There's something in here that, if untreated, will kill my Xbox. Stone dead. So have I caught it in time? And can we save my beloved Xbox? Hello, fellow gamers, and... Wait, can I hear ticking? One heck of a chunky boy. So if you'd watched my last video, you'd know that when I opened this Xbox to put in a new hard drive, I found out actually that it had never been opened before. The labels had never been peeled off or punctured or anything. No one had been in here. But that means that there is a ticking time bomb in this Xbox, specifically right about here at the bottom, and that will be the clock capacitor. Now, the problem that we have here is that the Xbox is 20 years old, and when Microsoft first made the first few runs of these, they used cheap components, especially with the capacitor used for keeping the time. And as the Xboxes have gotten older, those capacitors have stopped working, they've started leaking and leaking all over the motherboard, damaging other components, and just basically killing Xboxes. So since this hasn't been opened before, well, except the one time that I did it, I know that that capacitor has not been replaced. So we're going to do that now. And to help me along the way, I've got my usual suspects. So I've got my screwdriver kit, I've got the purest isopropanol you've ever seen on YouTube, and I've got my cheapest chip soldering iron in order to remove that capacitor and fit in a new one. Now, you don't actually have to fit a new capacitor, you can just snap off the old one if you want to. But I'd rather the Xbox keep the time. It seems to reset to 12 every time I turn it off. Right, so with that out of the way, let's get cracking. Okay, now that we're in the Xbox, I can see the culprit. It's the capacitor right down here. Let's just take a closer look. And now that we're up close, you can clearly see which capacitor we're talking about. It is this one here. Because you can see on closer inspection that it does look like something has leaked out and across the board up here a little bit. Thankfully, the Xbox still works. I just used it this morning. It is still working perfectly fine. So I think we've caught this early enough so that all we need to do is just take this out, give this whole area a clean up, and I'm going to pop in a new one. But if we're going to remove this, I'm going to need to take this motherboard, this entire motherboard, out of the case. You can probably tell a little better now that we've got the motherboard out of the Xbox. You can see where the trouble is and what the potential damage could be. Now it looks like, yeah, it looks like it's leaked a little bit. And it's gone over some of these little chips here. Well, like I say, the Xbox is still working, so I think we might have saved it in time. So I'm going to desolder it from the back of the board, so I need to figure out where this is on the back of the board. And despite the little dust bunnies, I think it's these two pins here.
A few moments later.
Okay, so I've just trying to soften the solder whilst gently pulling on the capacitor with a pair of tweezers, but it ain't budging. I think whatever has leaked out a bit is keeping it stuck on there, so I think I'm going to have to snap it off and then remove the pins. Most people just snap it off anyway, so this is no different to what most people would do. There we go. It's off. We can really see now that that has leaked, but I have seen worse. So let's get this cleaned up, remove those pins, and see if we can put in a new one, assuming it will take it. So I'm just giving this a clean with my isopropanol on the end of a cotton swab. Ooh. Yeah, some stuff is coming off. Right, alright, now that that's been cleaned up a little, let's get these pins removed and get the new capacitor in.
"15 minutes later."
Got it. Finally got them out. So now with the old clock capacitor taken out, I could just leave it at that. But no, I'd rather my Xbox keep time. You know, I don't want it resetting back to 12 o'clock every time I turn it off. So, we have a replacement. Now the capacitor in question that we're putting in here is a 2.5 volt 1 farad capacitor. Now I'm not an electrician, but my understanding is that means it's a low power, high capacity capacitor. Sounds rather useful for, say, I don't know, a clock, keeping the time, but it doesn't need quite a lot of power, but it was going to need to hold power for quite a long time. But hey, any electricians who are watching, if I've got that completely wrong, let everyone know in the comments, because I don't want to be misleading people. One thing I do know is that the stripe down the side indicates that this is the negative side of the capacitor. That's also shown, although not always in to my knowledge, that's also shown by it being the shorter pole here compared to the longer one, which is the positive. And luckily actually, Microsoft went ahead and labelled this board really nicely because they've got the positive marked out on every one. So the positive is this upper hole here. So the negative goes on this side, positive goes on that side. That's the way I'm going to put it in. Assuming it's labelled correctly, of course, but who am I to doubt Microsoft? Not the prettiest work, but it's on there. And there we go, we have our new capacitor installed. Nice. While we've got the Xbox open here, there is one other mod that I think we can do to the Xbox to improve quality of life, and it's this fan. The rear cooling fan on the Xbox, it's just okay, I wouldn't say ridiculously loud, but it is extremely noticeable. And I figured while I've got it open, may as well replace the fan with a new one. Now this is the one which I've gone for. Now unless I've been trolled by people online, this is the one that people are using in their Xboxes to make them run an awful lot quieter. But this is the one I'm going to try installing in here while we're at it. It's not going to make a difference to the clock capacitor or anything. That's going to either work or fail regardless of whether I do this or not. So it should be safe for me to go ahead and do this now too. And there we go. It was a simple matter of just unclipping the two clips on either side of the fan to remove that. And oh my god, that is filthy. Right, where's my Candair? There we go. New fan is clipped in rather securely actually. And then that would plug in to its power down here. Right, let's get the motherboard back in and see if our efforts have not been in vain. Well, apparently the fan is a touch on the large side. Maybe what I should have done is installed the fan after I put in the motherboard. Right, let's do that. Ah, there we go. Took a bit of a twisting around, but it's in there. Okay then, we'll take out the fan one more time and we'll put it in after the power supply. Make it the last thing we put in. Okay, third time's a charm. So yeah, I've ordered a fan that was too big. Now unless I start cutting off bits to fit this in, I'm just going to have to go for a smaller one. So I'll order a smaller one and we'll do that a little later. So, the moment of truth. Does it still work? Oh yes! Well, at the very least we haven't made things worse. Now, whether replacing the clock capacitor has worked or not is actually not that important. What was most important was getting that old capacitor out of there before more damage was done to the motherboard. The reason why it's not all that important is because since my Xbox is soft modded now, I can set it to just receive the time from an external server every time it boots up. So yeah, maybe I have just made things more difficult for myself, but I'd like to think I've put in a failsafe. Either way, nonetheless, we have ridden the immediate problem with the Xbox, and it is still working. So when it comes to console repairs, we're 2 for 2. Get in! Getting back to that fan, I did get a new one in the end. It's by the same manufacturer, but it's 60mm instead of 80. That 2cm difference in size means that I can now fit it in the Xbox without having to cut anything out of it. Instead of clipping it onto the base of the case, I used the rubber lugs that were included with it to attach it to the metal internal shell, instead of the case. Now, not only will these rubber lugs keep the fan in place, they'll also help suppress any vibrations from the fan itself. And the result? Well, this is what it sounded like before. And this is what it sounds like now. So what about you guys? Have you got an aging Xbox? Have you removed the clock capacitor in yours yet? Let everyone know your experiences down below in the comments. And hey, while you're down there, please leave a like if you liked the video, and there's always that subscribe button if you want to see me repair more of my console stuff. But with that, I'm going to sign off. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll catch you all next time.